So, that Bible of yours, you can put it on a card, or make it a card with wheels.
Drive it.
And drive it in, and put a steering wheel. All right, well, give me, just for fun, give me some verses about a card.
Pardon?
Give me some verses about a card, just for fun.
They put the testimony of yours on the cart.
And it was driven, and it was powered by,
Oxen.
I don't think so. Yeah, that's, you're real close. It was driven by two,
Oxen?
I could be wrong. I think it's milk kind.
Oh,
That's a different tale.
the milk kind, well, milk kind
That
was
was
the
the
one going to the
Philistines put it out.
Philistines.
I was talking about David.
Yeah, you know, when you do Bible memorization, and it says, well, wait a minute, is that Ephesians 2:3, or is that verse? Yeah, because both verses are read the same. Yeah, okay, so David was an oxen. And did he do that according to the law?
Nope.
No. But the milk kind, why was it the milk kind?
The Philistines wanted to find out if it was of God or not.
No. They were full of milk.
They
What is
kept
it?
their calves.
Yeah, they kept the calves penned up. So the cows would do what, though? Make noise. Yeah. I mean, why would they make noise? Yeah, they were in pain. I would assume they were in pain. What else was on a cart? You had that, the Ark of the Covenant, in two places. Ox and the other by milk kind. You drag it around. I use the verse occasionally. I'm not using the verse this morning. It was fit this morning. Yeah, it's not really. It's you drag your sin around as with a cart. Yeah, that is a verse. And where do you find that one? Old or new? No, it's Old Testament. I'm pretty sure it's in Isaiah. And I do use that verse occasionally. It's just, you know what? It's all repetition. All repetition. And because I repeat it, then I learn it. But I don't know where the verse is. I'm pretty sure it's in Isaiah. You drag that around with a cart. So the Ark of the Covenant was driven by a cart twice. The sin is driven around like, it's one of these asses in like a cart that you pull with a rope. Can we think of any other? I just thought we'd exercise that. All right, I can't think of any other. And, all right, chapter 16, Book of Acts. And there are notes in the back.
And we need your mic on, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry. And I don't remember how far we got. It would be wrong to go through this briefly again. And 40 verses total. Father, bless our lesson today and the nourishment that it gives us now, Lord. I pray that it would be as the rain that is out there, nourishing us and granting us the nourishment, the moisture that we need. Now, in Christ's name, amen. Where is the Word of God dropping down like rain on the dew, rain on the small herb? Where's that verse? We send it up by via balloons. Where's that verse? last week when dealing with souls. You know, we can use the Bible as a hammer, but you know, how else should we use the Bible? Anybody recall where that one is? Deuteronomy 32, why don't we go there? Deuteronomy, I think it's 32. Deuteronomy 32, verse 2. 32, verse 2. My doctrine shall drop as the rain. My speech shall distill as the dew, as the small rain upon the tender herb, and as the showers upon the grass. All right. That would line up with some have compassion making a difference. You know, otherwise you could overdrive people in one day. What happens if you overdrive them one day? To the young. Who makes that statement? What will happen to the young when you overdrive them one day? If you took Zachary right now here, overdrove that kid for a day, what happens to him?
Worn out.
Well, no. Let's go to the nth degree. Not worn out. They'll die. They'll die. And then, so who makes that argument? Anybody recall? Is it Jacob? Who's Esau's brother? It's Esau, yeah. It's Esau's brother. Yeah, Jacob. And he makes that argument with his brother. Okay, all right. Acts 16, 40 verses total. The paragraph markings, verse 1, 14, 16, 19, 25. This is the second missionary journey, so it is the mission, verse 1. And then they preach. Lydia gets saved, that is the message. And then you have this one that is possessed with a spirit of divination. So there's the mixing of the righteous and the unrighteous here. And then it's always about the what? What is the issue always about?
Moolah.
The moolah. The money. Verse 19, when her master saw that the hope of their gains was gone. I tell you, you know, the God, that is one of the main gods of this world. That is universal, folks. Now, I've heard this about Nazi Germany. I thought one of the reasons why they went to war was so that he could sustain the economy. Is there any truth to that?
To a point, yeah.
To keep the money going.
Yeah, because...
Or they were on the verge of some kind of collapse, or...
Oh, yeah, the inflation was so bad it basically took a wheelbarrow of marks to get a loaf of bread.
Even in the late 30s?
In the late 20s.
Yeah, I know that led up to the buildup in the late 20s, but the late 30s to push them into war. I thought that to keep the economy going, he decided we better invade. To keep it going.
Could have been a factor.
Pardon? Was that a factor?
Maybe.
Okay, so the money is a great motivator. The other was what's going on right now in the world is the bombing going on in Syria because of the gassing. That now I've heard this for 10 or 20 years now that Russia is on the verge of collapse. Anybody else hear that?
Russia is the biggest third world country.
Yeah, that they're on the verge. That the military, I've seen like a special out there. Their navy is scrapped out in a bay someplace that's just rusting away. Nothing's really up to snuff. The threats they make that we have these bombs and missiles that can shoot down any of ours are just idle threats, and they're on the verge. What does Russia normally deal with to make money? They have a lot of natural resources, oil, gas, timber.
Yeah.
But I thought that there's been a move made to kind of stop the gas supply.
Yeah, they provide a lot of Europe with their natural gas supply. When there was a situation, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years ago where they were threatening to cut it off and whatever, the European Union did something to get an alternative supply, I guess. Maybe from the North Sea or something, I don't know, where the drilling rigs are.
So if you're on the verge of, when people are on the verge of bankruptcy, let's do it on an individual basis. People will go and do desperate things. They'll maybe I'll make it at the casino. Maybe I'll, they rob a bank. They end up getting desperate. And so they make some desperate, not everybody, but some people make desperate moves because money becomes an issue. And so their master saw that the hope of their gains was gone. So the money is really an issue. And so this could force Russia to play their hand that we're going down. So they, you know, they make alliances and maybe we'll do an invasion. We'll anything to try to salvage whatever is left for those that are in power to stay in power. And then in verse 25, at midnight, Paul and Silas prayed, sang praises. That's when the chains fell off, the prison doors were open, so then you have the miracle. Now, I said last week this is another very good outline. I believe this is a Warren Wiersbe outline. It does not follow the paragraph markings, but it is a very good outline. And listen, these are not exhaustive. There's other outlines in here that you could have. But this is another good one. They have new helpers, verses 1 through 5. They get Timothy here. New opportunities. All right, what is one of the big opportunities in our country? Because of the southern border and people coming off from all over the place for witnessing. What are some of the new opportunities? Nobody wants to... New opportunities to witness it, I'm talking about. Who can we witness to? What? Spanish-speaking people. Spanish-speaking people. And so when opportunity knocks, right, you go through that. So there are new opportunities. You're going to go and meet new people, new lands. And as a result of these opportunities, new Christians are born. And that's what happened here with Lydia, and then you have the jailer. You know, sometimes we think of, in our life when disaster hits, we think, wow, this is not good. But we have to believe and trust what God said, that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to His purpose. And He placed Paul in this situation, Paul and Silas, so they could witness to this jail. And be saved, and so on. So here, the subheadings for this Warren Wiersbe outline was an open heart for Lydia, a possessed heart by this girl of divination, spirit of divination, and the hard heart, which was softened, which is the jailer. All right, then he comes to Derbe, verse 1, and God blesses east to west. Now, we talked about that in detail. He forbids going west to east. So this is just a general trend in the Bible as far as the direction of the gospel. If you look at history and the way it went, it goes up through Antioch, into Europe, from Europe into America, and so on. And so he forbids going the opposite directions. And just examples, the sun travels east to west. Excuse me, history travels east to west, revival travels east to west, and so on. Now, Timotheus is the Timothy in the New Testament. We may have looked up some of those. I don't feel led to look them all up. All you got to do is just pull out an exhaustive concordance and just look them up. And they're all there. Timothy's mother, Eunice, and Timothy's grandmother is Lois. It's obvious that these women are saved. He is raised in a godly home as a young child, and he's learned the scriptures, as it says, from his youth. I believe it says that from 2 Timothy 3:16. And then 16 and 17 is all scriptures given by inspiration of God, is profitable for doctrine, for correction, for instruction in righteousness, that the man of God may be perfect, truly furnished unto all good works. All right, and they traveled overland. They went, they didn't go by ship this time, they actually went overland. And to get to their destination there, it was a 200-mile trek. It wasn't, I would assume it's not wilderness like going through this country. And depending on where you were traveling in this country, how far you could get. In this part of this country, if you weren't on an Indian trail and you were blazing a trail, who were the first people to come in other than people like Davy, other than trappers? They would travel waterways.
Lewis and Clark.
Lewis and Clark, that's 18...
That's like 1803.
1803, and Louisiana Purchase was made from France.
Right.
And that's 1803.
Yeah, around then, yeah.
Well, I understood that some of the first people to ever come in, this had been after the trappers, and you got this Connecticut land deal, and it's always about the money, folks, that the rich people buy the land, they own this land, they take it from the Indians, then they parcel it off, and the stuff still goes on. I mean, you can see lots for sale. It just gets smaller and smaller and smaller pieces of the pie. Is that some of the very first people that came in were surveyors. I don't know if that was true. Surveyors came in.
Well, that's the way it was with Moses Cleveland landing in 1790 something. It was just checking out the possibility of putting in a settlement.
And so
surveyed.
All right, so they're surveying it out, and they're setting a road, and they're finding the easiest path, and these men would have to be not only trained in that, but they probably had escorts too to keep their hair on. And so they traveled overland. Now, I don't know how many and how long that takes for them to travel 200 miles, but in this part of the country, to go to Bedford, to make it from Bedford to Cleveland 200 years ago, that might be an all-day trip.
My uncle,
Maybe at least an all-day trip. This was supposed to, right here, was supposed to be really rough.
my uncle said to go from Cleveland to Bellevue took 2 days, 90 miles.
90 miles, 2 days.
2 days.
Oh, and then if you had a car, you had a flat tire every other mile. Yeah. But before that, when you were walking, when you were frontiersmen, and that, you're talking early 1800s. And then when did Cleveland? Moses Cleveland, I'm sorry. What is it? Late 70s?
1790. 1796.
1796. Then to go from here to Detroit, to the last post where the Indians whipped us. That's the War of 1812, or is that before that?
That's 1812.
That's 1812. That was rugged.
Yeah, that's still, well, if you were fighting Canada then, and they wanted Michigan.
So their traveling would have been on more commercial type traveling. I think Corinthian is a multiple languages. There's a lot of people going through Corinth and that area and through there. So the traveling isn't as rugged as this, but it's certainly not as modern as this, that's for sure. But it wouldn't have been as rough as first people settling here in this country. All right. Timothy is some of the first group on his first missionary journey that these people had been one, and then Timothy had gotten one along the way. All right, he refers to Timothy as his own son in the faith, and we looked up those verses last week. Paul refers to himself, if you have the son, Paul refers to himself as a what? Thinking of the word son. A father. Ye have not many fathers. He does make that statement. It could be where maybe Roman Catholics get father. You know, I mean, if we're going to cut them slack, how do they come up with that? Because we're commanded not to call no man your father. So they may go there and use that as a proof text. for what they believe. Okay, it seems as though Timothy was called in the ministry by the laying hands by the presbytery. It does state that. We looked up those verses. Timothy, the results of it's a mixed marriage, raised in a godly home. Now, do we know anything about the father who was a Greek? Anything known about the father who was a Greek? No. Was he lost? Was he saved? We don't know anything. All right? You know, and we systematically preach, you never marry a lost, you're a saved person, you don't marry a lost person, and so on. We don't know what he was. Now let's assume he's lost. It doesn't guarantee that the wife and the offspring are going to be lost. They were very godly people, so it's not a guarantee either way.
Well, it says as long as they believe.
The mothers believed and believed, which was a Jewess and believed, but it's right, that she was saved. And they were godly people, and then she was a believer. Timothy, then obviously the son becomes a believer, but we don't know anything about the father. All right? We don't know anything about the father. Just because two people are saved when they get married, is that a guarantee of joy and happiness? Man, it just isn't. And then when we go back to the kings, if you raise your kids right, the king was a good king and they had bad kids, man. It just, it's hard to reconcile verses like this. It just is. It just shows how evil hearts are. And so on. 1st, 2nd Timothy, 2 personal letters written to Timothy from Paul. I discussed how some say, well, that doesn't apply to me. That doesn't apply to me. I don't have to be that way. And I brought up what I felt was, at the time, when I brought it up, as a gift. And anybody know what it was? What it says, Titus was to be a lover of what? A lover of hospitality. You know, I've been approached. That doesn't apply to me. Well, where did we go to find that word hospitality? Anybody remember? Last week. Where the gifts are mentioned. Pardon? Romans chapter, and it lines up with the number, is if you go to all the gifts that we claim are no longer in effect, 1 Corinthians 12. Right. Well, 12, 13, 14 all run together on the same similar topic. Gifts, tongues, and so on. And when they preach that chapter of charity, it's technically dealing with the same issue. So it is Romans 12, and it was after the 7 gifts are listed. It was down there that they not given to hospital. What does it say? Romans 12. It does say, distributing to the necessity of the saints, given to hospitality. Given to hospitality. All right. We didn't live it. None of us, we didn't go through the Great Depression. But man, there were people begging. And we don't have too much of that today. One time, I left, it's when I had the whole building, I occupied the whole building, I left. I believe it was a Saturday. I worked late in the afternoon. It was probably 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And most people knock off early. I think it was a Saturday. I was locking the front door, and way down the street, there was a guy pushing a shopping cart. And he was just trucking along from Molesky's Valve. It's not Molesky Valve anymore. I don't know what's in there. There's a landscaper in there. Something's in there. Well, I think they do car, when you spruce up a car, what's that called?
Detail.
Detail. I think they do detailing in there. But starting there where, Rich, at the stone house where that tree is, the big sycamore tree, every door next to the sidewalk, do you know what he did?
Not.
No, he did not.
See if it was unlocked.
Every lock,
Every lock that ain't locked and no one's
and
around.
no one's around. Every lock that ain't locked and no one's around. He checked, just so you know what some of these people will do. And there was traffic, people driving. He checked every door.
Maybe it was auxiliary policeman.
Well, I'll tell you, I decided to wait because I wonder if he's gonna try this door. He came down and checked every door. And the closer he got, he must have been 6'8", 6'9". He was a real tall man. I don't even know if the shoes matched. And he had a trench coat on, and he was pushing this cart. I'm standing, this is at the office door. He checked my door while I'm standing there. The door into the grave, he checked it to see if that was open. Then he came down right in front of me there, and he didn't come by me and check the door. I was standing at the door. But before he got there, I got a track, and I gave him a track. Oh, he was a scoffer. He didn't want it, and he just marched down the street. But, and why did I bring that up? Oh, give it to hospitality. You know, people are desperate, you know. And it says, what does it say? Something about the saints and giving to hospitality. We're to help the saints out and give it to hospitality. But I decided to give him a track. I had nothing else to give him at the time. But man, he was like a derelict. I don't know if you could even talk to him. All right, he had a good report. It was prophesied. We looked up this verse last week that he was going to do great things for the Lord. That it was prophesied that way. And that in Philippians 2, it says that I had no man like-minded with me. It was only Timothy who was, and he was faithful to Paul. And I think we left off here at verse 3, the circumcision is, somebody had made this statement where I read it, and I thought, boy, that's a pretty good statement, because Paul circumcises him, but I don't think he circumcises Titus. Paul was not opposed, I wrote this in my side margin, he was not opposed to circumcision, but he was opposed to the imposing of it. Meaning you must do this in order to be saved. So why would he circumcise Timothy? So that he would not what? Make the other Jews that they were going to be witnessing to stumble. It was most likely to open more doors for him so he'd be able to witness. All right, it had nothing to do with salvation, but all to do with the stumbling. All right, yeah, that's where we left off. 1 Corinthians 9, let's go there. It's 1 Corinthians 9:20 is where he's been given a dispensation of the gospel, and he says, I became what? All things to all men. All things, and then this is where they running in a race, and he wants to receive a crown. What is the crown? An incorruptible crown. And that is by, obeying the rules. Verse 20, under the Jews I became as a Jew that I might gain the Jews. To them that are under the law, as under the law, that I might gain them that are under the law. So it becomes all things to all men. Where does it say that? Verse 22, to the weak became I as weak, that I might gain the weak. I made all things to all men, that I might by all means save some. We call that bridge building. You want to build as many bridges to people as you can in order to win them over. So what did Paul have in common with what are the two, husband and wife? And the other name? Aquila and Priscilla, they were what? Now, we know Aquila and Priscilla were saved. We know that. They were tent makers. So let's say they weren't saved. You know, he could strike up a conversation. No, I make tents too. And you want to build as many bridges as you can in order to win somebody over. Win somebody over. All right. Paul refused to circumcise Titus, for it had everything to do with salvation. As far as the motive why he did that. So if we go to Galatians 2, verses 3 and 4. But neither Titus, who was with me, remember the topic in Galatians is those that are so soon departed from the gospel and have turned back to the beggarly elements, and they're having the imposing of keeping the law, specifically circumcision with the Judaizers in order to be saved. But neither Titus, who was with me being a Greek, was compelled to be circumcised. And that because of false brethren, unawares, brought in, who came in privily to spy out our liberty, which we have in Christ Jesus, that they might bring us into bondage. All right, so he didn't want to promote this to have those doubt their salvation in order to be saved. All right, Paul's ministry was balanced back here to chapter 16. Doctrinal and evangelism. Verses 4 and 5. And as they went through the cities, they delivered them the decrees for to keep that were obtained of the apostles and elders which were at Jerusalem. And so were the churches established in the faith and increased in number daily. So he delivers doctrine, and as a result, people are getting saved, and people get saved. It's kind of like when we were at Bible Believers, the pastor described it like a sponge, which was a good illustration. Do you remember him describing this thing as a sponge? You know, he didn't give the illustration often, but he would give the illustration. In the summertime, what happened? You're cleaning up your kitchen, you're cleaning the counter, and you have the sponge and you mop it up. What happens to the sponge after a while? It stinks. And so he would say, you need to squeeze the sponge out to empty it. In other words, if all you're doing is soaking up more and more information without giving it out, that's not good. So he likened it. Yeah, I don't know where the illustration, that's where I got the illustration from. And it's a good illustration. See, in other words, in verse 4, they're soaking it up, and in verse 5, people are getting saved and they're giving it out. We need to soak it up and we need to give it out. So, doctrine first, evangelism second. We've got to know why we're going out. That's the doctrinal things. We have to know those things. I had a man, I sent him out, I said, he's the one that, his picture isn't up here, but he was my art man. I've told this before. I sent him out on a job. I said, Jeff, you got to go, you got to do a quote. He got in the car, he had a pickup truck. He got in the pickup truck and left. And Greg, which was a Mennonite, he worked for me both of them worked for me for years. And Greg, he said, did you tell him where he's going? I said, no. I didn't tell him where he was going. Can you imagine doing that? I said, well, he'll be back soon. It was about 2 minutes later, he pulls back up. He said, oh, I forgot to ask where I'm going. He just took off and didn't have any idea where he was going. I had hired Tammy on because the guy was dyslexic or he couldn't spell. In our business, you better be able to spell. And his problem was he couldn't copy. If you give him here's the information. This is it. You have to get this information on permanently on this on this thing. Well, he couldn't copy it. He couldn't even copy it. So when he would set type or set the artwork up, then Tammy would have to come along and double check to make sure he would spell it right. And it wasn't that he could spell, he couldn't copy. From, transferring it from one copy to the final product. Anyway, the nicest guy. He was the nicest fellow, but he left without knowing why. So in this case, we have to know the doctrine first before we're going to evangelize. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord. Verse 6. Now when they had gone throughout Phrygia and the region of Galatia and were forbidden of the Holy Ghost to preach the word in Asia. Excuse me. Let's turn over to Psalm 37, just for the exercise of reading the verse. If you were to guess where you're going to find that verse, the steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord. 37, verse 32, 23, excuse me. The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and he delighteth in his way. They're ordered by the Lord. If you were to guess where the verse appears, and I just quote the verse, where would you guess it to be? And I don't mean chapter and verse, book by book. That's where I wanted you to go. And if you guess Psalms, you're already told it's Psalms, so you know that. So if you had a second guess, Proverbs, that's a good guess. If there's another guess, a third guess, where would you go as an outside chance? I would go to Ecclesiastes, yeah. If it's in another place, you'd say, wow, I'm surprised it's in Ezekiel. You wouldn't expect it to be there. Because you would expect it to be in Psalms, Proverbs, or an outside chance in Ecclesiastes. Because what I had said on Wednesday night, Proverbs has a different kind of flavor. It's kind of like when you set the table and you put the food in. It doesn't taste like a meatloaf, or like, give me some number, or the roast beef, or the potatoes. It doesn't taste like that. It doesn't taste like vegetables. It's like the butter or something. They're all different flavors. These books all have different flavors. And when you hear a verse, because of the flavor of the verse, you can guess about where it could be. You can guess, once you know the flavor of certain books, you can guess where those things would be. Where are we at here? All right, the cry of all mankind, folks. Verse 9, a vision appeared to Paul in the night. There stood a man of Macedonia and prayed him, saying, come over to Macedonia and help us. It was really the cry of all mankind. And they want help. And generally they want to help. Who is it that they want to help? Who do they want to help? The general.
Themselves?
They want to help themselves. Yeah. They're not happy with themselves. They're not happy with their situation. They're not, they could have all the money in the world. And they're not satisfied. They're still not satisfied. They may have had bad family relations or those kind of things. There's a need. There's a need for all men. They have some kind of a need. And so that it's really the cry of all mankind, and help us. And generally, they look at what? Well, musicians sing it. They're looking in all the wrong places. There's a song that says that they're looking in all the wrong places. But here, this man in the vision, they know the right place. Come over to Macedonia and help us. It's the cry of all mankind. Verse 10, immediately. Let us follow God's plan and not our own plans. When I knew that this Maritza wanted us to come and visit her, well, Wednesday night is church. I can't visit Wednesday night. And we knew this on Sunday. We knew it on Sunday, Mrs. When did we know it? Sunday. Yeah, last Sunday. Well, we were going to visit. We found out on Sunday. She wants us to come visit her. And we didn't make the plan yet. Well, Wednesday's out. We're preaching Wednesday night, and she works during the day. Thursday, well, we generally have work night. That's out. Friday, that's the end of the week. People they're done. Saturdays. So that leaves 2 days. Monday and Tuesday. Monday's my worst day. There was a reason why we couldn't do it on Monday. I can't remember. And so we made the arrangements. We'll do it on Tuesday. Immediately. Well, folks, we're not waiting until next Monday or Tuesday. Such as tomorrow and the next day. I'm not waiting for that. When it's ripe, when the fruit is ripe, what should you do? Pick it. All right? It was the Queen Anne cherries. As soon as we were in Rome, as soon as service is over and I'm coming home from church, what I'm going to do, the first thing I'm doing, right after Mass, I was going to pick those cherries. Those birds ate every cherry on the tree. Every last one. Immediately. So a lot of times we forego things. I think the guy that charges the $20,000 for he helps I forget who it is. It's some famous guy that helps out like John D. Rockefeller. And he charges him $20,000 for his idea. And but whatever the idea was, you make your list, you put what you hate the most at the first on the list. And carry that out. Do whatever's first on the list, the thing that you don't want to do. I'm not saying they didn't want to go or it was a chore to them, but a lot of times we put things off. And we did not put it off, folks. Because a lot of times it's the great putter-offer. And then in the end we fail. We fail because we do put it off. So the opportunity was offered, and immediately they set out. Immediately. So we are to follow God's plan, not our own plans. Immediately. Verse 10, it is now the pronoun changes we. So who writes the book of Acts? Luke. And if we go there, it is never discussed. You go to Acts chapter 1. If we go to Matthew, Mark, Luke, I know we didn't include this in here, but go to Luke 1. Go to Luke, Acts 1 and Luke 1. Now Luke is stated in Acts, but the way we prove this, his letter of the Gospel of Luke in verse 3, it is addressed, you write under the in order, most excellent Theophilus. Most excellent Theophilus. That's what is given there. You go to Acts chapter 1. Acts chapter 1. And you go to verse 1. O former tree, there's a former letter have I made. It's O Theophilus. Again, it's written to Theophilus. So the assumption then is pretty obvious that Luke is the author. He's the author. So Luke is the author. He changes his pronoun from them to now us or we. He's included in this. So in verse 10, after he had seen the vision, immediately we which includes the author. We endeavored to go to Macedonia. So Luke joins the mission party at Troas. Verse 8, it was they. By verse 10, it is we. So he now is picked up along the trail, the Chisholm Trail. All right? It is the first harvest in Europe. The first harvest is those that do picking. I haven't picked in a long time, but if you pick berries, which is the best harvest?
Strawberry,
Say that again?
strawberry harvest.
Oh, I don't mean what you're picking. Well, that I have to agree, strawberries are good. But I don't mean what you're picking, but the time of the picking. No?
Spring.
Because, I don't mean that. The berries are going to be ripe. The first picking is
First
the best.
fruit.
And it's usually the middle berry, it's the biggest. You pick that first. And then a week later, then you pick all the other berries. And then after that, it is called the gleanings. Thank you. All right, so it's the first fruits are usually the biggest and the best. So it's the first harvest in Europe is verses 11, verse 11, 12. And we're going to stop here because we're almost 8-9 minutes till. So we'll pick it up here next week at verses 11, 12. Other blessed on the preaching in Christ's name.